Hello and welcome back once again to the Hard Knocks podcast, where we focus on all of those lessons they don't teach you at school. Unless you were lucky enough to have a mentor along the way that said, hey, don't make this mistake.
Right.
So we've run across quite a few in our time, and we want to keep on sharing them to be
Right.
your mentor if you don't have one, because
Yep.
we're tired of seeing people make the same mistakes again.
Yeah. In fact, that's one of the reasons I always wish I had a mentor along the way and didn't. And
Oh.
so, the hard knocks, it's all the stuff you learn at the school of hard knocks, right?
Yep, it really is. And this time, I got my D&D screen still up.
I know, this is so cool.
Yeah, it's really great. Yeah, when you're doing dungeon mastering or game mastering for anything, what you do is you set this up so you can put your notes behind it. Kind of sets you apart from the rest of the players.
Yeah.
I was making a skit, and I'm like, you know what? This could make a pretty fun little background. So there
Right.
we go.
Yeah.
All right.
I think it demonstrates your skill and that's something that you really, really enjoy doing.
Yeah.
That's
no.
really cool.
Love doing it. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's super fun. But let's move straight into the first hard knock today, which is something that a lot of people never really ever learn. Hardly ever, which is you need, if you are selling any type of a product, even a digital product, you need a looks like, works like demo.
Yes.
Now, what is that specifically?
Yeah, so I have to give props here. This comes from American inventor Doug Hall. It's a television show that was on 20 years ago or so. And I got to know Doug, and he talked about this, and he gives a seminar on it, and it's really terrific, about having a works like, looks like demo. And that means that you have a demonstrable product that you are demoing, but it's not the actual final product. It's something that shows that this is how it actually works, and then this is how it actually would look, but it may be a model. It could be a comp. It could be a photograph that you've manipulated in Photoshop. But it gives people a much better idea of how the final product is actually going to work or may hold in their hand, and it allows you to get to the next step.
Yeah, I think the main thing of why this is such a really big critical lesson is when you are demoing something for someone. That was a tongue twister.
Yep.
Is you generally at that early stage, you don't have the final product of what it's going to look like in 2 years. Nor do you really have the levity to be able to go and create that. And you probably shouldn't
Right.
because you
Right.
want customer feedback. You want to know what problems this is really going to solve. And so there are two different ways that people always look and feel something, which is one, I want to know what is it actually going to look like when it's done, right?
Right.
Paint a picture in my head. But the other thing too about why you want something physical or something they can actually use to get a feel for, okay, it will work like this, is that they can start playing around with it and they will very quickly start to put one and one together of, oh, wait, we could solve this problem. Or what if we did this? And the reason that's so important is you want people that
Right.
you're demoing for to be asking questions.
Right.
You want them to be engaging. And if you are sitting here with all of the knowledge of like, oh yeah,
Right.
it's this and that, you're not giving people the opportunity to use their curiosity and throw it back to you for free.
Right. And I think this is, and Doug works with inventors. And so if you're an inventor out there, or you're coming up with a concept, or you're a salesperson and you're trying to meet a customer need that just came across the table, like, how do I do this? This is really important for you to not wait until it's finally baked, but to actually think of it more iteratively, more of, here's a couple of steps I can make, let the customer almost be involved in the creation of it. Therefore, they end up owning it. And when they end up owning it, it's much harder to say no to.
Yeah. Well, plus, one of the absolute best tests of do I actually truly have something? Or is the product I already have and I'm thinking about improving like a new feature, right? This doesn't have to be brand new product. This could be an iterative thing you constantly keep doing.
Right.
If you give something to someone and you say, this is how it will look and this is how it will work, can
Right.
you step out of the room? Can you leave the room and just watch them do something with it? Will they figure it out without you?
Right.
That's also the big beauty of this, is that you get to test that out.
Right.
You get to see, is my product just good enough on its own that people just kind of get it?
Yes. Right. And I think that some of that, and we're going to get into some examples of that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I just think it's so important to hear feedback from a customer. And I will probably get into this, but I was thinking about when I was a long time ago, back in the cellular days, cellular modem days, back before your telephone actually could be a launch pad for connecting in with your computer and so forth. You basically just had a phone, and that was it. It was just a phone.
Yep.
And the phone had absolutely no capability of doing anything. So a really smart guy by the name of Bill DiNiccolo in the Chicago area figured out how to put a phone jack on the side of a telephone. It was really funny, if you can imagine that back in the day.
Yep.
And in his car, instead of having a car phone, which is what many people had, he actually had a regular old desk phone that you see like in the movies now, or you're watching Perry Mason, all that, the old phones, the dial phones. He had that in his car. That was his car phone. Because he had a telephone jack. And anyway, it was really funny to imagine driving down the road and he had this actual phone. But I was able to take his product, connect in with one of my modems. I was working for a modem company at the time, and connect it with my computer and have an antenna and so forth. And you had all of this Rube Goldberg kind of look thing. And I was able to demonstrate sending data over a cellular connection back in 1992. It was a long time ago, way, way, way early. But we couldn't have done that had we not thought, let's walk through this. Let's take it a step at a time. Let's put the pieces together. And the works like demo is what we are all about. How do we make this thing happen?
Yeah. Well, going into some examples, because I got quite a few.
Yeah.
And you have several.
Right.
The first one that comes to mind that a lot of people probably haven't even heard about. I'm sure all of us know what the iPhone is. Now, when you think about it, Steve Jobs was not the person who came up with the iPhone. There was an R&D team. I cannot remember the name of the man who was kind of in charge of the whole thing, and they were in charge of coming up with different ideas. And so, how do you think they sold Jobs on the concept of the iPhone? Because it wasn't them going out and developing the whole thing. It wasn't them waiting to get feedback from waiting to get feedback after they were done.
Right.
They wanted it now.
Yeah.
They need to know, should we put budget into this? So here's what they did. And there are famous pictures available. Maybe we'll throw some in the video for those of you watching on YouTube. But essentially, they had a whole boardroom with one of those big tables, kind of like what we're on right now.
Right.
They had a Mac desktop.
Right.
They had a LCD screen that they jacked up to have kind of little wonky actual touchscreen input.
Right.
They had wires all across the table for speakers, hard drives, CD-ROMs, all this type of stuff.
Right.
And they also had plugged into the computer a little iPod because they need to be able to play music. Because that was a huge selling point, right?
Right.
1,000 songs in your pocket. That's how he sold it.
Amazing.
That's a good hard knock to talk about some other time.
Yeah, that's one of the most famous talks I think I've ever remember Steve Jobs making.
Yeah. But to stay on focus, so they had an amazing works like demo. Jobs could literally go in and they kept iterating on that works like demo until they had like a slide to unlock, how everything would look and feel, because they also took that back. They had a looks like demo of this is what it will look like. Now for them it was easier because essentially it said it's this iPod.
Yes.
But bigger with a bigger screen.
Sure.
Which is a brilliant looks like demo.
Right.
Absolutely brilliant.
Yeah.
But they were able to iterate on both sides because they could very quickly see, we need this feature, so the physical design has to change. But the physical design doesn't feel really nice here, so we have to cut this feature.
Right.
Works great.
Yeah.
And that's how the iPhone was birthed. It was a looks like, works like demo. It's one of those things you never hear anyone tell you need to do in school, but when you get into being an actual engineer or product developer, that's the first thing you learn.
Yeah.
How to make a good one.
Yeah. And one thing that I think is really interesting just about that as a sidelight, that the biggest risk that Jobs took back then is that the iPhone didn't have a keyboard on it. It was just a screen.
Yep.
And people were very upset about that. because BlackBerry owned the market, especially the business market.
Yep.
And everyone knew what that keyboard was like,
Yeah.
and they could. I mean, there was Crackberry, is what most people were talking about. They were literally addicted to their Blackberries, and people said iPhone will never catch on because it's just got this membrane keyboard screen thing, and there's no keyboard on it, right? Obviously, people caught on.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it allowed them, that was the testing that could go on as well. How is this actually going to work in people's hands?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
There was just hopping into another example that happened last month. I was giving, there were some hot seats going on at a conference I was talking at, an AI conference.
Right.
And a woman came up to me at the table, and we started, talking amongst each other.
Right.
And she was wondering, I have this really brilliant idea. It was some type of, I'm going to completely botch this. It was some type of like new type of shovel or something like that.
Right.
And she was totally jazzed about it. And the advice I gave her was, it looks like works like demo.
Right.
So to give you, some ideas of, okay, how would I do this? So I said, great, you have this idea. Can you make a really basic sketch? She said, yes, I could
Right.
make a very basic sketch. Next, I said, great, go to a professional artist.
Yes.
Have them make it look absolutely brilliant, beautiful, like how the finished product probably will look.
Yes.
At the same time, I want you to take that kind of rudimentary design, and I want you to go to a 3D modeler. And I want you to pay someone to get a 3D model, and then you're going to have someone print it out on a 3D printing machine, right?
Yes.
And then when you go and give a demo, you have something someone can feel and move around. And it doesn't even have to be the full size. That would be a benefit.
Right.
It could be kind of small if you're on a budget and don't have thousands of dollars to go develop something physical for someone to play around with.
Sure.
But that's the type of thinking you need to be going through your head.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and
Right.
it doesn't stop with physical. We can also talk about digitally too,
Okay.
like digital products.
Yeah. What's an example of that?
Yeah, well, let's just kind of walk through. If you had an idea for a SaaS application,
Okay.
very common.
Lots of those.
Oh, there's tons of those.
Right.
And the thing you can do is say, let's say we're making. If I was developing Salesforce for the first time.
I'd love you to start that all over again.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
It's so bad.
It's so bad. Yes, the Roach Motel. But the main thing there is how I would tackle it is I would get my programming team to go make some very rudimentary like HTML forms. And I would say, great, the main functionality I want to show is like two things, right? This is top of my head. This is not prepared, right?
Right,
So
right.
the first thing would be I want to be able to submit a new lead. Wonderful. So I'm going to have them make some forms. I don't want my programming team to spend any time on design whatsoever. I just want to show this is what it would feel like
the
to
function.
actually do it.
Yeah.
Right. This is the works like part of the demo.
Right.
Right. You could talk about and say it's like programmer art. That's what we would call it in,
Right, right.
for video game design back in the golden age of Flash video games.
Right.
Oh, everyone had programmer art.
Right.
People still loved it.
You're dating yourself.
I guess at this point, I probably am, because that was 20 years ago. However, that's how I would do that for that part of Salesforce. And then
Right.
maybe I have another page that would show, wonderful, now that I have all these leads in one place and I have categories and things like that, look at all the sorting I can do. Look at the reports I could go and run. It would take my team maybe 2 days to make. Then to my design team, I would say, I want you to look at these 5 websites and use these couple elements and just mock it up. Make it look really, really nice. Because the thing that takes so long in making those products is integrating the design with the functionality
Sure.
and making everything really feel awesome.
Right.
It's okay if your works like demo is a little clunky. That's fine. You're just trying to show it's possible to do.
Right.
And then I'd go demo it. That's it. I'm not going to go and spend 6 months making it. I'm going to
Right.
start talking to investors. I'm going to go to a VC. I'm going to go to some private equity firms. I'm going to say, does this make sense? And I'm going to leave the room. And I'm going to see if they can figure it out.
Right.
And if they do, and they start to sense that at this stage it still has value, we got something.
Right.
And that's how, you can do that same thing for digital.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm thinking, probably not too far off the topic, but I'm thinking of focus groups, right? And it's very similar to that, where the best focus groups according to my friend Richard Kaplan, who's run many, many of these, is that you take whatever the product is and you set it in the middle of the table and you walk out of the room. And you're filming behind a one-way mirror, and you want to see what the reaction is. Do people figure it out or not? Right?
Yep.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So it's a really, really powerful tool. And more
Right.
people got to start using it.
Yeah.
More people really got to start using it.
Yeah. Yeah, I had also in our notes today, I thought it was kind of an interesting thing when you're doing this sort of thing and you
Doing
are,
this sort of thing
I'm
is
sorry,
in it works like, looks like demo.
Right. At some point, you have to put it in front of an audience. And that requires a salesperson, or it requires a spokesperson, or in the old days, it was a boardwalk barker. This is probably, I don't know, maybe 100 years ago,
Yep.
you had the equivalent of flea markets. You're familiar with flea markets. And you'll see lots of demos going on. And these were people that would shout and they would do some kind of a demonstration of a new product. And you still see this in flea markets, in fact. One of my favorite guys that does that is the ShamWow guy.
Oh.
Remember him?
Oh, yeah.
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 He was
brilliant.
amazing. Right.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. He was really good at nailing the works like part and
Yes.
showing that from every perspective.
Yeah. In fact,
Yeah.
we should drop that in. Because
Yeah, yeah. If you could figure it out, it might not be perfectly relevant because he was focusing on completed products.
Sure,
All
right.
done, ready to go.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. But having a looks like demo would allow you to start doing some things like
Well, the
that.
thing that is not so important as far as what the demo was is that this person really nailed the sales pitch, because that's really the next step. You might be the inventor, but I don't know how good you are at selling. I mean, that's what we're talking about here.
That is what we're talking about.
And one of the things, the hard knocks that you learn is that you may not be the best person to pitch your product. And finding somebody that can help you do that may be the difference between a successful product and an unsuccessful product and losing your money. I've seen that.
Yep.
I had a good friend who invented a product and it was really cool, and he was trying to pitch it himself. He didn't know what he was actually selling.
Mm-hmm.
And so being able to throw in a little line like the ShamWow guy is, this is from Germany, so it's really good.
Yeah, I love
it's
that stuff.
those little techniques of throwing that in.
Yep.
It's not
Well, it's kind of
something
like our
you would think about.
relationship. You come up with some ideas, and then I'm like, "This is how you sell it."
Exactly.
This is
You're
how
the story.
Yeah, I'm the
you tell the
guy.
story. Yeah, you tell the stories.
Yeah. So in closing though, for that one, before we move on to the next one,
Yeah.
is the true value and why you need to be doing this at the end of the day is because it lets you get in front of customers faster. You get to learn things faster, and you can iterate on your product way faster.
Right.
Because notice I said faster 3 times. Because otherwise, you're going to be spending time developing things, building things that you probably don't actually need. And you might find out your idea kind of stinks, which, by the way, I have had some of my personal childhood heroes tell me my idea stunk in various startups.
I
You get
remember.
used to it.
Yep.
You get used to it. But let's move on.
That's a hard knock on its own.
That you'll get used to it?
Yeah.
I don't know. It still hurts a little bit. But that's all right. So we got another hard knock here.
Right.
Another thing that no one teaches you in school
That's
at
true.
all.
Yep.
Which is especially when you're selling something, but even in day-to-day life,
Right.
when you're going through, maybe when you're hiring someone, but we'll probably focus more on the sales and marketing part because of the people watching, which is 2 most important questions to answer for a customer.
Right.
What happens after I say yes?
That's number 1.
And what happens when something goes wrong?
Yep.
Those are the 2 biggest and most important questions. So let's kind of break
Those
that
are-
down.
Yeah.
Let's go to each one.
Right.
So why don't you talk for a little bit about the power of what happens
Sure.
after I say yes?
Yeah. So I always have to give credit to where all this comes from. That's sort of me. And this all comes from the work that I did with Adele Ravella at the Buyer Persona Institute. And during that time that I worked for her, I probably interviewed close to 800 executives, director level and up, at very, very large companies. And the intention here was to understand, how do buyers go about buying? What's the process?
Yep.
And what we learned is that the process is somewhat similar depending on industry, but it's also nuanced depending on the industry itself and the products and the life cycle and all sorts of other nuances that you have to know. And given that, it really makes sense to do some very thorough primary research. So we weren't not doing feet on the street interviews. This was all on the phone, but it was recorded and it was also double blind. So the people that I was speaking with knew my name, but they didn't know the company I was representing, because Buyer Persona was doing work with other big companies. So it was a time for them to be cathartic and really talk about things. And through all of that, it was fascinating. They all seemed to want to get to one of these two questions, and they never asked it, was the amazing thing. And Adele pointed that out to me. Yeah, you'll find out that people in general, when they're in the buying process, they never ask what happens after I say yes, go, I signed the contract. Now what happens? And everyone fails to ask that.
You're right. No one ever asked that question. But why is it that everyone wants to know the answer to that question?
Yeah. So the cool thing is that it forces probably the salesperson on the other side, it forces them to think process. Oh, they're asking what happens after they say yes to me. That tells me I better have a plan. Oh, here's what happens. Glad you asked. Step 1, step 2. On day 3, we're going to do this. Day 4, so forth and so on. This is how it's going to work. And that's what the power is. It was fascinating to me, though, that these big companies, they're buyers, and I'm not talking about purchasing. I'm talking about these are products that are maybe bought once every 3 years or something like that.
Sure, they're big purchases.
Strategic purchases,
Right.
well thought out. And given that, it was really interesting because they all wanted to know the answer to that question. Mm-hmm. And
I feel like the from hearing you talk a little bit about it,
Yeah.
the main reason why that's an important question to answer and why people want to know it
right,
isn't because, oh, it's just a nice question to ask. It's because your experience with that product, with that service, starts after you say yes.
yes,
So why would you not want to know what is it going to be like in life after this is done?
right,
That's what you really want to know. You don't want to know
true.
all the other details about getting there. That will end. But what does not end and continues into perpetuity is what happens afterwards. But unfortunately, a lot of people aren't very good about thinking that far ahead.
Right.
They have this nagging thought. And so when you as a salesperson get out ahead of it and say, by the way, I want to paint a picture. Yes, these next 7 days, like this is what's going to happen on day 1, day 2, day 3, like you were talking about.
Right.
But also, after this is done, this is also what it's going to be like. And say you're selling a service. Well, that's your opportunity to say, and in 6 months, we're going to come back and reinspect this.
Right.
Or in 6 months after you get your iPhone, just so you know, this is why you need to get something like Apple Care.
Right.
Because you're blah, 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 blah.
Exactly.
Right. And
Right.
that's what people want.
Yes. That's the funny thing. They don't know. So we
They,
want to
you're
arm
right.
you.
People are terrible at knowing what they really want.
Exactly.
Oh,
So
absolutely.
we want to arm you with two things. If you're buying something or you're making a commitment, and I'm going to get into a couple of real life examples. If you're making a commitment, you need to be asking that person, what happens after I say yes?
Absolutely.
If you are selling or you are asking someone for a commitment, and that's what selling's all about, right? You need to be prepared, and this should be part of in your bag as a salesperson. It should not be waiting for them to ask that question, of which you would say, I'm glad you asked, if they have listened to this podcast and they know.
Yep.
You pull out your sheet and say, here's the project plan. But this is something that you're talking about from day one. That's the cool part of this. It's one of the most important, powerful sales tools you have, is to have this written down and to be able to talk with a customer and say, by the way, you're going to ask what happens after you sign the contract, after you agree to my proposal. We're going to talk about that right now. And now I'm going to lay out my project plan. It also gives you an opportunity, this is a plug for PR and marketing, it gives you an opportunity to tell people your expectations. One of the expectations is you want to be able to publicize the work that you just did.
That's another one.
That
Yep.
decision does not get made after the product has been delivered or the service has been applied. That decision is made now, right?
Yep.
So this is one where I say, and here's the project plan, and here are my expectations of this. That on day 30, you are writing a nice review of us because we satisfied every one of these things on your list and we went above and beyond the call. And if we haven't, I need to know about it on day 1, on day 10, or day 30. You're not waiting to the end. So now I'm talking about expectations of my client, right? And now I'm forming a bond of trust. This is the kind of thing that happens when I start laying out a project plan.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah. Well, the other thing that is very helpful is if you're getting, if someone's selling you something, like you're saying, go to ask that question.
Right.
Because here's the thing. I have had people over the years try to sell me things. Wow, just like everyone else. I'm so special.
Yeah.
But when you ask that question, if the person talking to you doesn't have an answer,
Right.
Stop and don't go through with the sale until they have the answer. It will get you out of so many bad things that can happen, which is kind of the second question.
Right.
That is amazingly powerful. Remember, that was question number 1. That's the most.
Right.
But there's a runner-up that's also incredibly powerful, and that is what happens when something goes wrong, or what happens if something goes wrong.
Well, I'm going to correct you on that. It's not if.
It is
always
when. Yeah,
it's
when.
always when.
Because something will always go wrong.
Always go wrong, right?
Yep.
And this happens so many times, and you can go on Twitter, Facebook, whatever, and you're going to find out something went wrong. It can be
Yep.
your job, it can be a performance of a vendor, all sorts of things. So you, again, as a salesperson, need to be prepared and tell someone that. And one of the examples I'll give is personal life. If you remember, not too many years ago, we had painters come in to paint our house,
I remember that.
and they were horrible. And we didn't know who to contact when something went wrong because we didn't speak Spanish in the house,
Yep.
and their work crew had no English speakers, so we didn't know what to do. We called the owner, who was in Europe at the time on vacation, right?
Yep.
And we had water coming in from our heat ducts on the second floor, flowing through down into the kitchen through the lights above onto the floor down to the basement.
Yep.
I mean, it was a disaster. They never gave us even the slightest idea. Hey, when something goes wrong, this is the phone number you call. And I think of one of my friends, Gary Slack, who runs Slack Barshinger, maybe it's just Slack Inc. now, a marketing agency. And he has on his business card his cell phone, which is pretty common. Back in the day, it wasn't. But he has his wife's cell phone number and his mother-in-law's cell phone number. So in other words, if something goes wrong, he's very clear about how you can get a hold of the guy.
Yep.
Right? And I love that about that.
Yeah, the thing that to me is the biggest selling point about why you want to be either asking that question, but more importantly, if you're a sales or marketing person, why you should bring that up and say, by the way, when something goes wrong, is because it establishes and forces you to establish empathy with the person you're selling to. Because you are saying, I'm not high and mighty, I'm actually going to fall on my sword here really quick. By the way, things go wrong. And if this does happen and you can run through different scenarios, you're almost at this point doing a negative sell, which is a whole different topic of maybe a hard knock of, that's a wonderful selling technique.
Right, it is.
However, what's really important when you're running through that is you are showing people, I will pick up and figure this out. We will sort out the problems.
Right.
And when you look through the history of time, I've always said to people, the number one biggest PR and opportunity for you to really show how much you care about your customers so that they will never leave you again is when something goes wrong in your company. And you see this at all the big, like Apple and Sony and Samsung and all these people. When one of those big players or even a small painting company, when they step up to the plate, when something did go wrong and they own up to it and they do an amazing job, Yeah, people aren't happy that something bad happened, but they'll never leave you because they know in the back of their head that everyone makes a mistake and
Yes.
everything eventually goes wrong. So now I know what's going to happen.
Right.
And now I don't have that worry because I know you have my back. And
Yep.
that's, to me, the real power of that question.
Yes.
And why it's something you should not just be prepared to answer, but it's something you should actively be answering.
Right.
Before the customer even asks you, you should be the one who goes and does it.
Right.
Now, where you fit that in the sales process, probably not the first thing you should talk about. That's something that you can figure out, but it's a really good thing that you will want to have answered.
Right. Let me call an audible if you don't mind. I think there's three real world life examples that would be helpful for people because to apply this, I wouldn't necessarily say it's only for sales. So let me
Oh,
first.
absolutely not. That's just, who we got on the other side here. Yeah.
Right, right. So I'm going to apply this to everybody who has ever worked for a company. So let's start there. Imagine you're on your job interview
Yep.
and you're wrapping things up and it's looking pretty good. They're probably going to make you a job offer. You're across the table from the hiring manager, maybe someone from HR. I'm thinking that's pretty typical. You have 2 or 3 people on the other side. And at some point, they're going to ask, do you have any other questions for me? Now I'm going to ask the question, what happens after I say yes? What am I going to experience from that? I believe you're going to experience one of two things. You're either going to find out that they have absolutely no plan for you, they have no idea what they're going to do, and they're going to just make it up. That's kind of a fun environment for some people. Really, they love it. They may say, you know what, we hadn't really thought about it, but we're good folks. Jump in. You can interview all of our people, have a lot of fun, and we're a startup. We're just having fun, right? And that's okay. For others, no, you want a plan. You want to see, I'm glad you asked. On day 1, we start the training program. Day 10, this happens. This is where your travel plans are going to be. You're going to get an expense report, whatever it is, right? And I think that saves both parties a whole lot of heartache.
Yeah.
So now imagine in that same scenario, I ask, okay, that's great. Thank you very much. One last question. What happens when something goes wrong? Now the smart person's going to say, well, give me an example. What happens when what thing could go wrong? Well, one of the things that could go wrong is, well, I don't get along with my office mate, or I feel like I've been passed over for a promotion, or I'm sick and I've gone over the number of personal days that I have. Right?
Or my job is terrible because my manager is the one who's actually really bad, but I have no one else to go bring that up with. Otherwise, I'm going to be the one getting canned.
Whoa, that's really good because when people
I
quit,
have several of my friends in that exact situation.
yeah, and you find out that people don't quit companies; they quit their managers.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So tell me, how would asking that question have helped them?
Well, if they had the balls to ask it in the first place.
Okay, that's true.
And none of them, I think, probably would.
Yeah.
Love them to death. They know who they are if they're watching.
Yeah.
I get at you all the time.
Right.
However, it'd be a very interesting question to answer. I feel like most companies would say, well, I think that's something we'll deal with when we get there.
I think you're right.
And that is how most companies will deal with it.
Yeah.
And if you're in a situation where you can say no,
Right.
then that does give you something to say, hey, by the way, I've been around the block a few times. And this is a problem I know happens. And I'm sorry, but I can't say I'm interested in working here unless you give me a plan for what's going to happen.
Right.
Or I want to know that there's someone that I can go and get a private drink with.
Right.
And tell them. And know, by the way, this might even be written in my contract.
Right.
That I have someone to go tell.
Yeah.
Maybe, I don't know, spitballing this completely.
No, I think
but
you're right.
it opens up
Yep.
a lot of different options. For
Yeah.
sure. Yeah.
And that's
Yeah.
of course HR's job.
Yeah.
People, the people operations of your company should be doing that. But I will tell you from my own personal experience, if you're working at a small company, HR is often possibly even related to, married to, long-term relationship with the owner of the business. Happens all the time.
Yep.
And so you don't feel like you can be comfortable talking with them. So you do have to find someone.
Yep. Yep.
Could I go on to two others, or is that
Sure.
okay?
Yeah, we can do one more. We'll
Yeah.
do one more.
Okay. All right. So let me do this one. I think it's a fun one. Is what happens when you are with that special someone, and you're really serious about making a commitment, and whoever is thinking about this more than the other, at some point they're going to say, "Hey, we should." Next step, maybe we'll move in together. Next step, maybe we'll think about looking at rings, right? I mean, they start,
Sure.
and this starts escalating very, very fast. Imagine if the other person says, I love you, but what happens after I say yes?
That's I mean, I understand the question there. I
Yeah.
can't say I would ever ask it in that context or
Okay.
that way.
Yeah.
But I think I know what you're going for.
Right.
Yeah, I feel like most good relationships already have all of those discussions.
Okay.
That's something that the Catholic Church, for example, is
Yeah.
very good at. I have a buddy getting married.
Yeah.
They walk through all that stuff. And
Oh, that's cool.
They don't give you a blessing or allow you to get married unless you've gone through interviews with other couples, answer a 100 question long questionnaire to make sure you're on the same page with a bunch of other stuff.
Oh, that's really good to hear.
Yeah, so that's
Yeah.
a big part. That's what they do.
Yeah.
I don't think that's every single Catholic church, but it is a big part of many of them.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's
yeah.
really good to hear. And I think then the other question is what happens when something goes wrong? And I think that is something that a couple does have to work that out, because things go wrong all the time.
Yep.
And you have to figure out how you're going to escalate those things and have good sit downs and talk about those kind of things.
Yeah, true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And of course, that doesn't happen very often.
No, it doesn't. That's a very good point.
Yeah. Yeah. And friendships work the same way. So
Yep.
I know we went a little off course there, but I think that's important for us just as a public service to start thinking, you can apply these hard knocks to all sorts of other parts of your life, and they really will help you. Helps you in working for and with other people, for finding a job, for selling something. All of those things work together, and it actually helps you brush up on how to use these. If you're
Yep.
just trying to use them in a sales environment, it's probably not going to be much use to you. You need to be able to apply these across all of life.
Yeah, but you can start there.
Yes.
Get comfortable with them first.
Exactly.
Yeah, yeah.
Yep.
And before we move on to the last one, by the way, I forgot to say thank you, Costco, for cookies.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
I
Yeah.
love a good cookie.
Yeah, I chose the chocolate chip. What did you choose? You have the
Chocolate chip and oatmeal
Yeah.
raisin.
Yeah.
Cookies are great. However, we're moving on to the last hard knock here. Mm-hmm. The only questions you will ever need on a lead form online.
like this one.
So we're getting really, really specific here.
Yeah, this one I really, really like.
And there are only 3 questions. Mm-hmm. And when I say only, a lot of people will say, okay, that's great. That's not a lot of questions. But what we're really talking about here is you need to add these to every single lead form.
Right.
You need to make sure you have these in some way, shape, or form. So I'm going to read the 3 questions. And then we're going to go through why each of them is so important. And we even got some fun little examples of things you learn from them.
Right.
So the first one is, what problem are you trying to solve? The second one, what drove you to start looking for a solution to this problem today? Notice, I didn't say what made you start looking. I said what made you start looking today. Very key, because there's a reason they didn't look yesterday or tomorrow. They chose today of all the days to make the day that they were going to go and look for a solution. And the last one is, how hard has it been to find a solution for this problem? And this is usually something that's a drop down of where you just say easy, medium, or hard.
Right.
And that's all you really need. So let's run through what the main benefit is of
Sure.
each of those, and then we'll get into some of the examples.
Right.
So I'll take the second one, because I
Okay.
love that one. You want to tackle the first?
Sure. Yeah. So again, I'm always careful to talk about who generated all this. This came from Glenn Livingston, or Dr. Glenn Livingston. He's a friend of Perry Marshall's. He is a psychologist, and he was very curious about this because he's an AdWords guy. and he wanted to run a really good landing page that would be really good at collecting information. So this comes from a lot of research to figure out what are the minimum necessary questions so that he can
Yep.
actually score a lead.
Yep.
Okay. And so he set up a fun little business, which I don't think actually existed. It was just a fun business that he would be testing out ideas. And this happened to be, I think it was pet food or a pet department or something for guinea pigs.
Yeah.
And Glenn, if you're listening, you can give us a link and we'll link you over to your training. So it's very interesting because what problem are you trying to solve for guinea pigs, right? And through the research, and he presented this at a conference, people do have questions about how to solve something around guinea pigs. It's about how do I care for them? What kind of food do they need? What sort of shelter do I need to build for them? Can they take a bath? Can I wash them? What's the what kind of lifespan can I expect? You know, all sorts of things that you don't think about in something so small as a guinea pig. So you can appreciate that how big your product or service is, or it's $1 million sale, it still applies. People are still trying to figure out what is the problem specifically that they're trying to solve.
Well, the beauty in this question is also in the fact of, for example, if you're selling a product or a online digital service or anything really,
Right.
asking someone what problem you're trying to solve, for example, let's go back to that Salesforce example. If I ask what problem you're trying to solve, that's not something you generally ask when someone wants to buy a service or to buy a product like that. You generally ask questions more like, hey, how many people are in your organization, et cetera, which, are good questions to answer.
Those are qualifiers.
Yeah, but the thing about that particular question in that particular way, it's very open-ended.
Right.
I might be using this because I don't have a sales team. Whoa, shocker. That'd be really weird to know. Yeah. And you'd never know unless you ask, well, what problem are you trying to solve here?
Exactly.
Really important.
Yeah. And I think that we as salespeople tend to skip over that. We jump to making an assumption of why they called us out. Oh, we're here to talk about carpeting or tiling or roofing or whatever it might be. And we really miss that, no, we're actually here to talk about solving a very specific problem. And that's your in because you just ended up with that lead form. And now you can use that as an opportunity to widen the door and to sell them even more.
Yep. The second question, what drove you to start looking for a solution to this problem today? This one is so good. This is my favorite of the three, easily. Because you are asking, all right, great. So you have a problem. That's wonderful. Something changed.
Right.
Everything staying equal, you would never have done anything else. So what was the new strange element that made you actually go do this? Because clearly this problem existed yesterday too, in all likelihood. Why didn't you do it yesterday? A lot of people, the biggest pushback you're going to get about adding these to forms in the first place is, oh, it's going to lower our conversion rate by so much. Oh, people don't answer those questions. By the way, they're wrong. People answer those questions. And even if your conversion rate goes down, which ours haven't for any that we've added it to, but even if it does, you're going to learn so much more that the conversion rate on the sales side is going to be so much higher, it's a moot point to make. So that's the big purpose of why that's so important is you start to get into your buyer's head of learning, oh, okay, tell me about that person behind the screen that's making you do this that otherwise you'd never mention, not because you're hiding it, but it's just not relevant to the conversation. If I'm going into a car mechanic shop and I'm getting, say, my oil change, like this is a completely different example, right? If I am a mechanic and I know I'm also kind of a sales guy for my company too in this moment, well, why today? Well, my answer might literally be, well, my dad finally got so ticked off of seeing the light on the car after driving it 15 times that he'll tell me to finally get it done. Oh, that's really good to know. Why? because I am not the person you're really selling to right now. You're performing a job so that my dad is very happy with that.
Right.
Which means when they come back, you might even throw in a small little pitch at the end to say, by the way, when you come back, why don't you bring your dad so he can go, look at the car? Wow.
Yeah.
You know why that ended up being important? Because that's the real person I'm selling to.
Yes.
And if I make him happy, well, this guy, his kid, isn't the person making the decisions about who goes where.
Right.
It's the dad. And now you just got an in. And that's just some of the things you can learn.
Yeah.
And I got some other examples.
Sure.
We can run through, but let's get to that third one.
Well, before we go on, could we stay with 2?
Sure.
Yeah. So to me, the biggest benefit of 2 tells me where in the pipeline or where in the sales process am I. So let me give you an example. Someone might respond, my boss asked me to go get 3 vendors to bid on a project. That's pretty top of funnel,
Yeah.
right? Compare that with, we are out of OSHA compliance. We are in a food and beverage business, and we have to get this fixed by the end of next week. Bottom of the funnel. They're ready to make a decision. Now I can start, when I start thinking about lead scoring,
Right.
this is one that I want to make sure gets right to the salesperson, maybe the outside salesperson, to go make a call today.
Right. And by the way, for those of you who have no idea what he means by lead scoring, it's a way for you to find out what priority of attention you should give each of the people reaching out to you, because
Right.
you don't have infinite time in salespeople. So you generally want a way to make sure that your best salespeople know the best leads to get to right away, because you have to do some type of tiering if you got a
Right.
lot of people coming in.
Sure.
So for those of you in marketing listening and didn't know about that, that's another reason you want this. You will be your sales team's best friend, which is
Right.
a very good situation to be in.
Yeah, absolutely. You want to be their favorite tool.
Oh, yeah.
So that's, to me, that's the power of it. And, I referenced the Buyer Persona Institute. They have a very similar question. That's the only question that we asked in an interview. We asked one question, and that was it. And then we let the customer talk for 30 minutes.
Yep.
And the question was that good that people could just do it all on their own.
Yep.
Yeah.
And that last question, which is how hard has it been to find a solution for the above, gets right into lead scoring once again. They can
Right.
answer easy, medium, hard. It is a good indicator for you just to use from a standpoint of, okay, how much time have they probably really spent looking for this? If you find that someone answers the question of why today in a, whoa, okay, that's a very specific reason, and they also say very hard, that is the most important lead you will probably get the entire month. That is like a slam dunk finish.
Right.
That's what you want.
Yeah. And I think, again, that tells me that if they have an urgent need and it's been hard to find a solution, that tells me that my competitors, they probably didn't fill a form out on their competitor's site. Well, that's a question the sales team needs to find out. Who else did you look at?
Right. If they say easy, then 100% they probably filled it out with other people.
Right. And if it tells me that it's hard and they're on my site filling this out, this tells me, and I can go look at my raw history to tell me where they were on my site, but it tells me the kind of content that I want to amplify because I know that I'm beating out my competitors. I may not find that in any kind of keyword analysis.
Right. Yeah, there's a lot
Right.
of good stuff there.
Yeah.
So I want to show for the second question in particular.
Yeah.
I've got 5 these are from forms from one of our clients.
I love this.
Where
This is real.
Yeah, this is real.
Yeah.
Just to show you the value you can get. I'm going to read all these off. Some of them are fantastic. The last 2
Yep.
are amazing. So here's some examples of what people have written in to bust the myths that many of you have of, oh, they won't actually give me anything, because you're wrong. First one. We needed a more in-depth repair than our internal building maintenance staff could handle, and it was above their skill level. Oh, okay.
Wow.
I just learned a lot of stuff here. One, they have a team that does the work. You're hiring me to come in, and they weren't skilled enough to do it. So now I've got a bunch of questions going off.
Right.
One, if this is work that's routinely easy, I better be asking some qualifying questions to find out if I want to get involved in this mess.
Yeah.
But also, this is an opportunity to make myself look like a hero.
Yeah. And of course, my brain's going off in the dollars and cents, and I'm thinking I can charge a premium for
I
this
can
service.
definitely charge a premium for that service. Second one, we
Right.
are unhappy with the service we are getting from our current contracted workers.
Oh,
Again, that's kind of interesting. I kind of have competition, but not really. And it makes you start asking good questions as a salesperson of,
yeah.
might this be a difficult client? Do I want to get in this relationship?
That's
You might
true.
want to take more of a negative selling technique for this one.
Yeah. Could be.
Now we got another one. A recent customer has complained about an excessive amount of rust residue coating the inside of their pump, which would have contaminated their system if installed without prior cleaning. This is an example of someone at the bottom of the funnel.
Right.
They are ticked off.
Yeah.
They are not happy.
Yep.
You can tell from the extreme amount of detail they're putting in this question. This is someone that's like, this is a problem and it needs to be fixed yesterday.
Yeah.
Huge.
Yeah.
Now, the next two, my absolute favorites.
I know
Okay.
these are good.
These
right?
are my absolute favorites. So, first, we are needing an American flag painted on the side of our shipping warehouse. That was what they wanted.
Right.
And I need to add that because there's context. So, how did they answer, why do you start looking for a solution today? They wrote, we need more America in our life. I love that.
It's so
Talk
cool.
about knowing. So
Yeah.
you might laugh on the other side there, right? You might be laughing right now. Okay,
Right.
that's just someone having fun.
Yeah.
Well, no, because you're really smart. Now you know how you're going to talk to them.
Yeah.
You're going to make a joke. You're going to get empathetic with them. You're going to use that to your advantage so that you are never going to lose that sale ever again. Because you might even walk in when you talk with that person and you might hand them an American flag and say, by the way,
Right.
I love America. God bless it. Right?
Yeah,
And
totally
then,
agree.
Then
Yeah.
they'll love you to death. They might even look past something that's absolutely going to go wrong. See
Right.
how we're tying these together?
Yeah, of course, me, Bill, on the manipulative side, I would say I would make sure that my friend John is the salesperson going out because he's an Air Force guy.
Oh,
Right?
absolutely.
Right. And make sure he drops that and just is aware of that. Right.
Oh, that's just being
I was
smart.
in Afghanistan. I was a Halo diver. So, those kind of
I
things.
love what you're doing
Yeah,
here.
I love
Thank you
that.
so much.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And the American flag still works.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That's totally cool.
Last one. And this is of all of the responses I have gotten to this question from every single thing I've ever seen. This is the absolute best one.
I know. I love
Because it is
It's
so
human.
it's so human.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
This is someone who they submit an answer to the question saying, we need some cleaning done in our facility. Wow. Not a great answer to the first one, which is what problem?
Right.
This is how they answered the question of why today.
Yeah.
My clothes smelled horrible and my wife let me know.
I'm thinking how bad that must smell.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I know how I'm talking to that guy. I know how I'm going to make him a hero. And when we shake hands and he says, you got the job, I'm going to say, you know what my true purpose here is and how I'm going to know that this was a success in 2 months? And the guy's going to look over at me and say, no, what is that? I'm going to say, it's not going to be how clean it looks. I'm going to call you and say, is your wife happy and are you still married?
Yeah.
That's how I'm going to make that sale.
Yeah.
And that guy is going to take every single opportunity to get a drink with me whenever I want the rest of my
So
life.
true.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just love these. Yeah.
Oh, they're great. And
Yep.
by the way, talk about another nice benefit. Just running through some of those, you start, because those are all for one of our clients.
Right. Yeah.
You have started to put together some different segments of the different types of customers you have.
Right.
And the different types of sales processes you might have.
Right.
Remember, we talked about 3-4 episodes ago about why you need a sales process.
Yeah.
Well, why not ask these questions to start finding out, oh, these might be some good insights I learned
Right.
to go apply straight to my process.
Yeah.
And these 3 questions, by the way, are things that even when someone calls in, because when someone calls you or you see someone in physicality, you drive there, for example,
Right.
they don't have a form to fill out. So you have to train your sales team to go ask the questions.
Yeah.
And then
Good
tell
point.
you afterwards.
Yeah, good
Very
point.
important to
Yeah.
do.
Yep.
Yep.
I agree.
But it is just, I love it so much because You just learn so many things. No one minds. People, it's honestly just very surprising to me that most people don't ask the question.
Yeah.
I really think it gets back to people feeling like they are stepping over a boundary.
Yeah. Yeah.
But at the end of the day, everyone wants you to jump into into the well they fell into with them.
Right.
Everyone wants that.
Yes. And of course, I'm thinking, Perry Marshall, our good friend, he would write a whole autoresponder sequence on all of these. Right.
You're right.
So he would, and think about this. When you get a form that's filled out and it says something about my clothes smelled horrible and my wife let me know, there's a lot of story there. So you can imagine having a drip campaign, autoresponder, or maybe it's just a single blog that gets at this.
100%.
Right?
Oh my goodness. Talk about with these questions. Sorry, I'm interrupting because this is a great idea.
Right.
You want to know how to get the best customer testimonials? Because most customers don't write well-written testimonials
Yes.
that really hit here.
Right.
Because they don't remember why they did it.
Yes.
They don't remember why. Because it usually happens afterwards. But if you have this, you could go back to the guy and say, by the way, can you write us a testimonial for this and reference how we started this conversation in the first place?
I love
We
that.
won't use your
Yeah.
name if you'd like.
Right.
Because this is kind of a personal situation. Ha
Sure.
ha ha ha
Right.
ha.
Right.
Right?
Yeah. That's really true.
That would be a beautiful story.
Yeah.
I'd probably get him on camera. Because if I sent that out to everyone, I'd say, by the way, has your wife ever said this when I'm trying to go and advertise a service?
Right.
And then it comes straight back, and everyone watching thinks it's funny, but it's actually real. And they're like, yeah, no, just the other day, my shoes actually left these stains everywhere because of blah, blah, blah. You might just get more people that are in that same situation.
Yeah. That's so true.
Yeah.
So
just
true.
thought of that now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that's, again, we share these ideas, but like the looks like, works like demo that we talked about, it's the same thing. You have to take an idea that we're sharing in one area and then apply that to other parts of your marketing. Don't let us be the boundary of which these ideas are in.
Yeah, you just saw what happened live right now.
Explain it. Use it someplace else. Oh, that'd be a great autoresponder. Oh, that would probably be an interesting ad campaign. Oh, I should put that on social media. I mean, you have to start thinking outside the box.
Well, you realize what we just did. We solved the 3 tenets of how you can enable someone to be curious.
Yeah, that's a good point.
1, you have the data.
Yeah.
The data's right there.
Right.
2, is the data very easy to understand? What is more easy to understand than someone complaining about something?
Right.
Very easy.
You get it.
And then 3, do I know what good questions to ask? Well, these are pretty easy to go figure that out.
Right.
And if you're
Right.
talking to a sales guy or someone in operations, those questions kind of come up. So that's how we were able to iterate that so quickly. And just like with all these other things we've talked about that John was saying,
Right.
when you share that or you apply it to other parts of your business, like you're allowing other people's curiosity to be infectious.
Yeah. It's cool.
It's great.
It's cool.
Yeah, yeah. So that wraps up the 3 really, really great hard knocks that no one's ever going to teach you at school. And I'll quick recap them for you, just so you know, right? So the first one was you need a looks like, works like demo. And the main reason you need a looks like, works like demo is because a customer wants to be able to understand, oh, this is how I could use it for themselves, not how you want to use it. And you're given a nice shortcut for them to give you really good feedback that otherwise you wouldn't get for 6 months, a year, 2 years, 10 years. Second thing, the most 2 important questions you are ever going to need in life, in sales, in marketing, figuring out if a company is a good idea, a good startup idea, etc., right? What happens after I say yes? And what happens when something goes wrong? Now, we already probably spent 20 minutes talking about it, so I'll save you a recap on that one. And then lastly, we also talked about how you need to add those 3 questions to every lead form, to your sales calls, to your processes,
Right.
everything. Because, man, the things you could do, you'll
data.
never lose a sale.
Yeah.
The data is another thing, but you'll never lose a sale ever again, and your customers will think you actually care.
Yeah.
And hopefully you do. But if you don't, then I guess you could fake it. I don't know where I'm going with this one.
Right.
But yeah, it's a wonderful question.
Yeah. It's good. Yeah.
So we'll go to our last little segment here,
Yeah.
which is over the course of us talking, generally the two of us come up with an idea or two that usually related to what we talked about, sometimes not, that we just kind of want to discuss back and forth. No
Okay.
holds barred. I ask John something, John asks me something. So the question I'm going to go and ask
Okay.
is, what is the most interesting looks like, works like demo you've ever seen?
Oh boy. I'll explain one that I did myself that'll sound kind of silly, and
Cool.
it's a simple little story. But I had developed a really great relationship with an editor at PC Week magazine. Matt Kramer is his name. I don't know if he's still there anymore. PC Week. I assume that's gone. And so I was working with another modem company at the time, and we had figured out how to miniaturize that down to just a couple of chips. It was really cool. And I thought, the biggest problem with a modem is it's fairly large. It sits underneath your telephone or something like that. And I thought, the one thing that's on everybody's desk is a mouse mat. Even today, people still have mouse mats, right? And I thought, I wonder if we could build one into a mouse mat. And so without actually doing anything other than building it out, I actually created a mouse mat and I put connectors on it and whatever. And I took some photography of it and I sent it out to Matt, and he actually ran it as a story of a mouse mat modem.
Yeah.
Right? We didn't get any orders on it. I didn't pursue it. But to me, it was one of those, I didn't realize the power that you have when you come up with a looks like demo, works like demo. You can explain it to people. I showed you something
Well, you basically
earlier.
sold it before it existed. And,
before. Yeah.
Yeah, and saved yourself probably a lot of time.
Right, exactly. And the fact that I actually had a feature story written on it is pretty amazing.
Yeah,
right?
it is amazing.
Which is the power of a good relationship.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. I love that.
Yep. So the question I have for you is, you've got your D&D materials here.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And I'm really curious, what is the most interesting, fascinating thing that you enjoy? You really enjoy D&D.
Oh, yeah. Yeah,
right?
that's great.
What is it that keeps you coming back? What is the thing that you would explain to a friend like, hey, you've got to get involved in this. This is why you need to be considering this. What is the energy behind it for you?
Yeah, that's the storytelling.
Okay.
Yeah. In any other game you'll ever play, there are barriers around what you can do and what you can't do.
That's true.
And for good reason. And so in tabletop games like this, there's many others. I love playing all of them. The really fun part for me is, one, I love making my own worlds, own stories, and crafting them, making my own characters, and having people just come in.
Right.
My friends come in as characters, which is, you have this nice orderly world and you know how everything works, and then you drop an atom bomb straight on it and you have no idea what the heck is going to happen.
Okay.
And it's a lot of fun, and it's just a really fun opportunity to share with a lot of friends, because you have this guy's story and that girl's story over there, and they're all bringing their own different experiences and weird pieces of curiosity. And as a game master, the person kind of running it rather than a
Right.
player, what's fun is that you get all that blasted straight at you.
Okay.
And you're molding it and you're trying to make sense of all of it live, so that you can kind of move the story together creatively with everyone. And you're like, wow, what kind of a weird story are we going to tell? Because when I sit down here, I have no idea.
So you have to make the whole thing up on the fly.
A lot of it depends on how you play.
Okay.
The way I do, you do end up making up a lot of it on the fly.
Wow.
Like, you know how things are going to go.
Okay.
Generally, but hey, if this person over here says, no, I'm going to take a cannonball and I'm going to dive into the ocean, I'm like, well, I didn't think about that as a possibility, but that would work.
Right.
That would actually work. So let's
Okay.
go think about how this would happen.
All right.
And it's a lot of fun.
That's cool.
Yeah.
I love how I think that's so healthy for anybody watching, to have hobbies that use your mind, and you're not just doing some mindless task, right? It's keeping your imagination fresh. And I think that's one of the things that I've noticed as my contemporaries, as they get older, they lose their imagination. They're not doing the fun stuff that they could have done when they were young. They start to, the world starts to get smaller on them.
Smaller.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's unfortunate.
Yeah. Well, when you make your own worlds, you can make them as big as you want.
Exactly. I love that. That's probably
Yeah.
an ad.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I guess that's true. Good point. But that's going to be it for this episode of Hard Knocks, everyone. I hope you enjoyed it. We gave you a ton of really great content. I want to see more people asking this question. If you ever run across me, I want you to ask me these questions because then I'll know you listen to it. You are actively using it. I love hearing people's stories about what they learned from this type of stuff.
Yes.
It is so cool.
Yeah.
But until next time, everyone, stay curious. See ya.
Bye.